In this video, I want to talk about the top 11 books that I read in 2020 in no particular order. Number 1, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. This book takes a biblical perspective on issues like stress, anxiety, hurry, things that feel synonymous with the American lifestyle, and it is one of the most convicting books that I have ever read. John Mark Comer claims that the stress, the anxiety that we feel in our culture comes from a root cause of hurry. So that's why he quotes John Willard in saying that we must ruthlessly eliminate hurry. And so we could do this in 4 different ways: with silence and solitude, with Sabbath, with simplicity, and with slowing. So to address each point, Comer points to the teachings of Jesus. In a culture where it feels rewarded to work late, to work on weekends, to answer emails in the middle of the night, we need to be reminded that Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And if that's the case, and we practice rest and worship once a week, then we start to live all 7 days differently. Ultra Learning by Scott Young. This guy completed a 4-year MIT computer science degree in 12 months. After that, he decided to spend a year not speaking English and instead decided he was only going to speak in the 4 languages he was trying to learn: Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and Korean. He seems superhuman to some degree, but he explains his methodology in this book. So my biggest takeaway from this book was the idea of meta-learning. And what meta-learning is the idea of learning how to learn. If you think about it, growing up, we are given syllabus, we're given a textbook, and we're just expected to learn, but we don't necessarily know how or why or how to deconstruct that. In a lot of ways, it is giving a man a fish instead of teaching him how to fish. And I think that's the power about this book, is Scott Young teaches how to learn and how to learn effectively. It's easy to watch YouTube videos, it's easy to read blog posts or watch TikToks, definitely watch TikToks. But what's hard to do is really sit down and come up with a curriculum and figure out a plan in which you can learn something efficiently and effectively. And that's exactly what Ultra Learning does. 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. This guy is, I think, one of the smartest minds out there today. He used to be a professor at the University of Harvard before going out to the University of Toronto, where he teaches clinical psychology. And this book really made me step back and evaluate, how am I living my life right now? With so much that felt out of control in 2020, I think this book really had me asking, what good could I do or contribute to the world today? One idea that it suggests is, what if you treated yourself like someone you were responsible for? Because there were several times in 2020 when I was not necessarily doing that. It really is a good thought exercise. It's so easy to blame all the external circumstances, all the external things that are going on in your life, and not take full responsibility for what you have, especially in 2020. But when you ask yourself, hey, what is in my control? What is in my control that I can do today? I think you start to act and live a little bit differently. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. So this book is a series of experiments that the author runs in order to ask, does this productivity hack work, or is this just nonsense? He tests things like, how productive can I be if I worked 90 hours in a single week? How productive could I be if I only had water for a month? Wild things, but it's all in the name of productivity for him. It's quite entertaining, and he uses research and self-experimentation to figure out what is actually productive and what is counterproductive. Rejection Proof is another fun, easy read about a guy who spends 100 days setting himself in situations where he is likely to get rejected. It's great perspective on dealing with risk and addressing fear. And to me, what's really fascinating about this book is how far he is actually able to get when he just asks. And this guy asked for things like if he can borrow a book from Barnes & Noble, if he can change a coffee shop's Wi-Fi password, if he can actually just sleep at a mattress firm. It's really funny stuff, but it's surprising how many people actually just say yes to him. Ultimately, he finds that rejection is a muscle. And not only that, but fear of being rejected is far worse than actually being rejected. I know in my own life, I've been shocked at how far I can actually go or accomplish if I just ask, if I just toss it out there and see what happens. If anything, if you're willing to put yourself out there to get rejected, you're going to be shocked at how far you can probably actually go. The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger, who was the CEO at Disney from 2005 to 2020. And for me, the biggest takeaways were the lessons that he taught about negotiating. And he didn't even really teach the lessons as much as he just told the stories. Over the course of his 15 years as the CEO, he acquired Pixar, he acquired Marvel, he acquired Lucasfilms, he acquired Fox. 4 huge companies in entertainment, and he's the highest paid CEO in the entertainment sphere. With a powerhouse backing him like Disney, he could probably manhandle his way in a negotiation, but instead, he takes a very different approach. He talks about the importance of, in a negotiation, both parties feeling like they're walking away with this being a win-win. So what he'll do is, in a very candid manner, he will lay out all of the details on the table, even if that means that is going to give his opposition some sort of leverage. And he does this because he has found it's the most effective and efficient form of negotiation. And to me, I'm like, that's good business. That's good relationships. It's treating people like people instead of like objects or businesses. Getting Things Done by David Allen. So this book is a little bit antiquated, but there are a couple principles in this book that I think have made a really big difference in how I operate on a weekly basis. The biggest takeaway is understanding that our brains are really good at thinking, but they are awful at remembering things. So what he suggests is having some sort of a brain dump system where you can get all of these random thoughts that are in your mind just on paper or on your computer, and so they're not clogging up your storage anymore. If you like computers, it's the same thing as freeing up RAM. When you have all these windows open up on your computer runs a little slower. But when you start closing these windows, closing all these other programs, your computer can now start running faster. Same principle. When you're not thinking about all these other random things, even it's like things I need to get from the grocery store, trips I need to plan, make sure I pack that, or tell this person this. When you can just get that out of your mind, suddenly your mind is much more clear to think about the actual task at hand. So this system, along with a system called Building a Second Brain, which I'll link to here because it is an entire productivity wormhole, are 2 systems that have really changed my productivity and the way that I work and operate in 2020. Superhuman by Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey is actually the same guy who started Bulletproof Coffee. This book is a great introduction to something called biohacking. And biohacking is the idea of changing the chemistry or the physiology in your body with self-experimentation or different supplements in order to find like some sort of a peak performance state to feel energized, all right? This book is full of little tidbits of how to heal your body and keep it operating at a peak state for years to come. It covers everything from diet, nutrition, and supplements all the way to red light therapy and stem cells. So it covers the whole gamut. For me, the biggest takeaway was the idea of introducing red light therapy into my routine. It's great for reducing inflammation, for increasing collagen production, for reducing joint pain. I'm really thoroughly enjoying the benefits of it so far. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Gary Keller owns a real estate company, Keller Williams Real Estate. And you might have seen the signs before, but he has a principle that basically asks, what is the one thing, if you were to do this, that will move the needle the most in whatever it is that you're working on? So for instance, what is the one thing that will move the needle most in my marriage? What is the one thing that if I were to do today would move the needle most on this project? What is the one thing that you fill in for X? I found myself frequently overthinking things or seeing a huge project and just getting overwhelmed by all the things that I had to get done. And instead, I can now approach it asking, what is the one thing if I were to do right now that will move the needle the most in whatever it is that I'm working on? And it's been really helpful to just simplify the process and not feel overwhelmed when approaching large tasks. This principle has been really helpful in allowing me to just get things done and be productive rather than feeling overwhelmed and looking at a huge mountain to climb and not even knowing where or how to start. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. This is a very funny book that has a lot of practical advice about money, and it's definitely geared more towards millennials. The biggest takeaway from this book for me and my wife was the idea of introducing a guilt-free spending budget. So basically, it is an allotted money that we have each month that we can spend on whatever it is that we want. If we want Gucci shoes, we go out and get those Gucci shoes. And when we get those Gucci shoes, we don't feel bad or guilty about buying those shoes. We still have money going towards our investments. We have money going towards our savings. We're using our money responsibly, but also still being able to treat ourselves in some form or fashion. It's a good principle that has allowed us to view money in a much more fun and playful way. Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. This book was kind of like a therapy session in some ways. Brené Brown talks about the power of vulnerability and how vulnerability is really affecting us as a culture. The biggest takeaway for me in this book was a story that she told right before she gave her TED Talk. She was asking herself the question, what would you do if you knew that you could not fail? And she's sitting there backstage just thinking, pondering on this question, and as she's walking out onto the stage, she sees the lights and changes the question. She says, what's worth doing even if I fail? So that's what I want to leave you with from the 11 books that I finished in 2020 that meant the most to me, is asking you, what's worth doing even if you fail?